Hi there, and thanks for joining this week's edition of Northwest Newsweek. The Ontario NDP are calling for Minister Greg Rickford to be removed from his post as Minister of Indigenous Affairs. New Democrat leader Andrea Horwath held a news conference Friday with residential school survivors who don't feel comfortable with the Kenora Rainy River MPP having a lead role in the search for former residential school burial grounds due to his past.
He is Indian Agent 2.0.
The distrust of Rickford stems from his time as a lawyer with a Kenora firm, which signed a federal settlement on behalf of residential school survivors back in the early 2000s. Some of those survivors claimed another lawyer with the firm improperly directed money from the settlement. However, a Law Society probe into the allegations was either withdrawn or dismissed. Indigenous Affairs critic Saul Mamakwa, who attended a residential school himself, says he can't understand how Rickford can remain in his current position with the previous allegations by other survivors.
Every time we hear Mr. Rickford talk about residential schools, the search for our missing children, or the crimes of the past, we are re-traumatized.
There's a lot of mistrust there in terms of what happened involving the Law Society. And so how can we trust an individual when we know that there's unfinished business?
Rickford has not responded to the call for his removal, but the Premier's office released a statement early Friday. Spokesperson Ivana Yelish says Minister Rickford was decades removed from the events that were complained about. Every single allegation against the member of this law firm was withdrawn or dismissed. Any interferences to the minister and these allegations are completely false. The 2021 forest fire season has officially come to an end. It was a far busier season than most, with several evacuations and the Northwest dealing with thick smoke in the air for much of the summer. And as Adam Riley reports, it also managed to break some records.
It's surely one that will earn a place in our organization's memory in many respects.
Out of the record-shattering 793,000 hectares burned by forest fires in Ontario this year, the vast majority were here in the Northwest, with nearly 780 hectares burned as a result of the 989 fires that ignited between the Manitoba-Ontario border and Marathon. According to Fire Information Officer Chris Marchand, much of the heavier fire activity, which saw larger community-threatening fires, took place in the Red Lake region.
Particularly where we call the elbow. It's where that corner of the boundary makes an angled turn. That area in particular is very fire prone. It's a combination of the fuels and the weather pattern. We had lots of hot, dry, windy weather and with very little rainfall. And that is a perfect recipe for those very large fires that we saw in those areas.
This year, weather stations in that elbow area recorded half or even 1/3 of the normal amount of rainfall. And as felt by area farmers, most of the Northwest experienced drought conditions. And as a result, the AFFES will be tracking those conditions and factoring them into the fire hazard for next spring. Marchand notes, in addition to the overall hectares burned in the Northwest, two of the largest fires seen in the region, one in the Kenora district and one in the Red Lake district, surpassed records themselves, one of which achieving a notable accolade.
The Kenora 51 fire is actually the largest fire on record now in Ontario at 200,677 hectares. It surpassed a 2011 fire from Sioux Lookout. And that fire accounted for, 1/4 of the hectares burned this season in Ontario.
As for 2022, Marchand says it's difficult to predict what the next fire season will bring, but is hopeful they will see manageable situations that will have minimal impact on people, lives, and property. Adam Riley, TBT News.
A man who participated in the kidnapping and beating of another man who he thought had information about his missing sister has now received a lengthy prison sentence. 30-year-old Andrew Otway is the brother of Alyssa Turnbull, the young woman who disappeared in Nipigon in early 2020. In September of that year, 4 men forcibly confined and assaulted a man in Nipigon and demanded info about Turnbull's disappearance. The victim was then put in the trunk of a car, but he managed to escape and call police. Otway pleaded guilty to kidnapping with a firearm and aggravated assault. The judge sentenced him to 6 years in jail, citing vigilantism as a serious concern. The other 3 suspects have not yet had their cases heard. Turnbull remains missing with a $50,000 reward posted by the OPP. OPP and Pickle Lake are investigating a fatal motor vehicle collision which occurred on October 28th. Police say the lone occupant of a southbound vehicle left the Highway 599 and rolled. The 19-year-old occupant, Whitney Muckuk of Mishkagogomang First Nation, was pronounced dead at the scene. Anyone with information on the incident is asked to contact police or Crime Stoppers. OPP in the Rainy River District are investigating a 2-vehicle collision which claimed the life of a Winnipeg man. It happened in the morning hours of October 30th on Highway 621 in Dawson Township, when a southbound car collided with a northbound tow truck. The 36-year-old driver of the car was pronounced dead on scene. The 2 occupants of the tow truck were not injured. The Thunder Bay District Health Unit reported 2 more COVID-19 cases Friday. One came from a district community, while the other was on a First Nation. Both exposure sources are still unknown at this time. This led to 23 active cases across the district, the most since June 19th. Meanwhile, over in the Northwestern Health Unit, there was 1 new case coming from the Kenora area. The NWHU has a total of 5 active cases. The district's medical officer of health is encouraging residents to get the COVID booster shot once they're eligible. Dr. Janet DeMille says the health unit already has booster appointments starting as early as next week, and amid rising case counts, DeMille is also reminding residents that we aren't out of the woods just yet and to continue to take precautions against COVID-19. Catalina Gillies has more.
After seeing the highest active COVID-19 case count in Thunder Bay since mid-June on Thursday, the district's medical officer of health says it's concerning, but in some ways not surprising.
We've seen a lot of relaxing of some restrictions and maybe people having more interaction with one another, and it is allowing sort of COVID to spread.
The district has seen low case numbers throughout the late summer and early fall, but Dr. Janet DeMille says we are now on the brink of seeing a rise in cases.
What I've always said in the past is COVID is tricky. It's going to appear to, come out of the blue sometimes, and it's going to spread quickly, especially when people are together.
However, there is some positive news on the horizon. The province announced it will be expanding eligibility for booster shots to more Ontarians. DeMille says she will be encouraging Thunder Bay residents to get the extra jab and that they've been actively planning for the ramping up at vaccination clinics.
Booster shots, are going to be given to people 6 months after their second dose, and it's actually just going to give them an added layer of protection against COVID-19, both getting an infection and also, again, preserving that protection against serious outcomes requiring hospitalization.
The Ford government also recently announced its long-term plan for lifting all COVID-19 public health measures. If there aren't any concerning trends, the vaccine passport could be gone by January, and all mask-wearing requirements could be gone by March.
That was one aspect that I was uncomfortable with, and the proof of the proof of vaccination, I think, is still very important. I wasn't too thrilled by that particular removal, at least in January. I would like to have seen that a little bit later, but I recognize that it's really going to depend on what happens over the next couple of months.
Catalina Gillies, TBT News.
A deal brokered by the Ford government will see free menstrual products offered in schools across the province, but not in schools based in Indigenous communities. A Kenora area woman is hoping a donation drive will help end period poverty. Adam Riley has more.
This is so unfair. Period equity exists whether or not someone lives in a town or a First Nation.
Tanya Cameron has a history of being the potato lady of late. Since the start of the pandemic, she's been taking donations of potatoes and shipping them to the far north, where a bag of potatoes can go for anywhere upwards of $10. Now Cameron has shifted her sights for November, pushing for a month-long donation drive of menstrual products through Moontime Sisters.
A friend introduced me to the coordinator a couple of years ago, and the coordinator asked if I'd be able to use my network to connect with individual First Nation educators to see if they would receive and distribute menstrual products to on-reserve students.
Last month, it was announced the province had struck a deal with Shoppers Drug Mart to provide schools across the province with free menstrual products for students, which Cameron had hoped would be inclusive, as in some remote communities, prices for tampons and pads can be in excess of $20.
One of the first questions I had upon learning of that announcement is does this initiative include on-reserve students?
Answer, it doesn't. Schools like Dennis Franklin Cromarty or schools on other First Nations across the province are federally funded. Ergo, they aren't included in this provincial deal. The fact of which prompted this question and non-answer between Kiiwetinoong MPP Saul Mamakwa and Education Minister Stephen Lecce on October 20th.
As First Nations, schools in the riding have reached out and they asked if they can participate. Is the minister telling me the program is not for First Nation schools?
There was inaction by governments to date, and it was our government who made a decision to help end period poverty in this province on the advice of many student leaders, including the Ontario Student Trustees Association, who counseled us to find a fix to this problem.
Despite First Nation schools being left out by the province, in less than a week using social media, Cameron has received an outpouring of support for the initiative.
It's just day one, but I've received $2,000 in donations so far. I'm already thinking I may have to find some warehouse space to sort and go through and box up, that I might need a small army of volunteers.
On Friday, newly minted Indigenous Services Minister Patty Haidu hinted the federal government would intervene, tweeting, "Period poverty should never be a barrier to going to school. Menstrual products are a basic need, and very soon they will be freely available in all on-reserve schools." But the post did not indicate a plan or timeline for the initiative. The menstrual product donation drive runs until November 25th, with several drop-off locations listed throughout the Kenora and Rainy River districts. Adam Riley, TBT News.
When we come back, opposition to a proposed underground nuclear waste storage facility grows. A new group in the Dryden area is looking for people to join them in their stand against a proposed underground nuclear waste repository in the Ignace area. The countdown to a decision on whether it will or will not happen in the region ticks closer and closer. Adam Riley has the details.
This is not Canada's dream. NWMO keeps on saying this is Canada's dream. Yes.
For well over a decade, the Nuclear Waste Management Organization has been scouring areas of the province looking for a suitable location for an underground nuclear storage facility. Currently, there are 2 sites left in the running, South Bruce and Ignace. And over the years, various groups have voiced their concerns over the proposal. But now a local grassroots group, the Sunset Country Spirit Alliance in the Dryden area, is looking to add their voice to the discussion. Organizer Sylvia Green-Gannett was pleased with the turnout Wednesday, following a planning meeting the previous week.
So tonight, it was more like a town hall meeting, which we wanted to really hear from the residents and the people that came to the meeting about how they're feeling and what their concerns are, as well as our own.
Due to some technical issues, a slideshow and a documentary was unable to be shown to the crowd of almost 30 people, but it gave an opportunity for organizers to explain what they know of the NWMO's proposal and hear from the audience.
I've had these concerns, but when I mention it to friends, family, anybody, nobody even knows what's going on. You know, the knowledge isn't out there.
It really disturbs me. Hopefully some of these ideas that you guys have come up with here that it'll help us maybe to get some more of this information out.
Discussions also included some concerns and issues with Dryden City Council moving into a Phase 2 agreement with the NWMO.
Roger Nesbitt and the mayor and 4 councillors said yes, they're going to go into Phase 2. Okay? Now the thing that's got Shane upset and has got me upset, they went into Phase 2 with NWMO and they're going to have meetings and not tell us.
Green-Gannett is hopeful the SCSA will be able to expand its membership, raise money, hold walks to protest the NWMO's proposal, and invite experts in the fields of geology and nuclear waste to speak at events in Dryden. Adam Riley, TBT News.
Monday marked the start of Treaties Recognition Week, and officials at Lakehead University and politicians at Queen's Park are highlighting the need to educate people on the importance of treaties. Kurt Black was at LU for the beginning of the week-long event.
Treaties and Reconciliation Week began at Lakehead University with a 16-panel display set up by Anishinaabe Aski Nation to educate the public about treaty relationships and to dispel commonly held myths about Indigenous peoples. Monday also saw a virtual opening ceremony with remarks from Lakehead University officials, guest speakers, and Fort William Chief Peter Collins. Lakehead University Vice President David Barnett spoke on the importance of this week in order to strengthen relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples.
Lakehead University honors the importance of treaties and helps students and residents learn more about treaty rights and relationships. By learning more about our collective treaty rights and obligations, we can create greater understanding and nurture these relationships.
For the full schedule and more details on Lakehead University's Treaties Recognition Week, you can visit the school's website. Meanwhile, at Queen's Park, Kiwetinoong MPP Sol Mamakwa called on the Ford government to drop its appeals of the Robinson-Huron Treaty Annuity court case. The annuity has seen no change since it was set at $4 per person in 1874.
Treaty is a sacred agreement that is to be interpreted in a way that serves both parties, end quote. Speaker, again, will Ontario stop wasting time and resources and finally honor the promises of the Robinson Treaties?
Ontario's Attorney General Doug Downey wouldn't comment on the ongoing dialogue involving the Act, but did stress the importance of the matter for the Ontario government. That sentiment was echoed by Indigenous Affairs Minister Greg Rickford, who spoke on his first-hand experience of the impact treaties can have in our communities.
I've seen firsthand the importance of making modern treaty relationships real and meaningful for Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples alike. Deepening our collective awareness and understanding of treaties can help us nurture and advance these relationships and help us move forward together along the path of meaningful reconciliation.
Kurt Black, TBT News.
There's been yet another crash at Sistonen's Corner involving a vehicle speeding through the stop sign at the notorious intersection. The surveillance video shot Wednesday afternoon shows a car at the top of the screen coming off Highway 102 at high speed and crossing Highway 1117. Fortunately, it didn't hit any passing vehicles, but the car flipped into the ditch on the opposite side. The driver, a 27-year-old woman from Fort Francis, was not hurt. OPP have charged her with making an unsafe lane change. This is the fourth incident at Sistonen's Corner since September, where vehicles have accidentally blown through the T-shaped intersection. 2 of the crashes involved transports, including one where the truckers were killed, and 4 other people were injured. Last week's ceremony, which marked the start of construction of the Greenstone mine, could lead to further development of the long sought-after Right of Fire. The large chromite deposit buried deep in the region's far north has been a constant talking point about the future of mining in Ontario. But despite multiple players staking claims and collaborating with the Indigenous communities that live in the area, development seems just out of reach. However, some inroads have been made, including discussions and assessments from First Nations seeking access to the provincial highway grid. Those roads could lead to companies having better access to develop the Ring of Fire. During the groundbreaking event marking the start of construction for the Greenstone mine, Minister Greg Rickford spoke about the importance of the Ring of Fire and how the start of the mine in Geraldton area could lead to a push.
Starts at Arrowland First Nations, and I think we discussed the extraordinary opportunity to work with those communities. We have some Indigenous communities farther north working on the environmental assessments now, lock, stock, and barrel, and so we see great things.
This is also another reason for them, those that are working on those projects, to see that what happened here is just going to be, it's a prime example of working together and making things happen. Now, it might not be tomorrow, but whatever it is for the future of our communities. This will help our community.
Over the last 2 months, one of the big players in the Ring of Fire, Noront Resources, has begun entertaining competing offers from a pair of Australian outfits looking to develop the region. Coming up after the break, a project almost 4 years in the making opens its doors. A community within a community is possibly the best way to explain what Aspen Court will be for seniors in Atikokan. On Thursday, residents and officials gathered to celebrate the official grand opening, and as Adam Riley explains, the facility will offer options for people who want to live out their retirement years in the community.
10 months ago, residents and officials in the town of Atikokan gathered to mark the start of construction for Aspen Court, a $14 million, 38-unit supportive seniors complex. After months of work and minor hiccups, officials gathered once again to celebrate the official ribbon cutting. Mayor Dennis Brown says for years the town has needed a place like Aspen Court and believes it will benefit the community and its residents.
There are a lot of seniors that want to have a place like this where they can, deal with other seniors, and there's still places to walk around here and have, discussions with other seniors in here in the common room.
For Community Living Atikokan Executive Director Jim Turner, Thursday's events brought a sigh of relief after 3.5 years of proposals and negotiations.
From the time that I went to my board at Community Living Atikokan and proposed that Community Living Atikokan take on the building of Aspen Court, to working with CMHC through the National Housing Strategy to secure the mortgage for it, seeking funding through fundraising, through NOHFC, and seeing the speed at which the building went up, it was phenomenal. And getting the keys last week was sort of the cherry on top.
Another benefit experienced by the town was the more than $2.5 million being pumped into the local economy through contractors shopping local, hiring local, and staying in the community. Built by the same company that built Marathon's Peninsula Manor, CGV Developments, Aspen Court features 1- and 2-bedroom units, each with their own independent heating and cooling systems, a common area, laundry facilities, and even a salon. Turner says a key part of what made the building possible was the in-kind support from the town of Atikokan.
One of the big things was the donation of the 4.5 acres that this is built on. The town waived the development charges. They waived the connection to the water and sewer services. They waived tipping fees at the dump. So it was all in-kind contribution. We needed that to demonstrate to CMHC that there was support from the community.
Turner says all but 10 units have been filled and believes as seniors visit their friends who live at Aspen Court, over time, those units will begin to fill up. Adam Riley, TBT News.
Thanks so much for joining this week's edition of Northwest Newsweek. I'm Danielle Bain. We'll see you next time.